Well, if you really step back, we're in the middle of about a $5.5 billion investment cycle. It began, I think, with the investments in the casino, followed closely by the convention center. And what we've seen over the last number of years, a great deal of public and private investment has continued. And we see a lot more investment on the horizon. So although we talk about a $5.5 billion cycle, my hope is that the investment continues well beyond that, and we'll see significant investment in the years to come. Well, Public Square in many ways is the front door of this community and this region. In my way of thinking, it's where we come together, whether it's to see historically a presidential candidate. We've had presidents speak on the square, whether it's come together to protest or to come together to just celebrate things that are happening in this community. So Public Square has always been that centerpiece. The reality, though, is that Public Square has been in disarray for many, many years. As you know, it's been mainly a transportation-focused square. And when we talk about the square, it's actually been 4 distinct quadrants. And it really has not been an inviting public space. The beauty of what we're doing now as a community is we're investing $35 million to transform this into a world-class space that in many ways will become the centerpiece of the city, and it'll become the crossroads between the western part of downtown and the eastern part of downtown. And in some ways, that symbolic unity of the east sides of Cleveland and the west sides of Cleveland. So from our perspective, we're very, very excited. It's a beautiful opportunity for us. We're very pleased by the designs that have been put in place by Field Operations, which is a New York-based landscape architecture firm that did the High Line in New York. We think they've created a great plan for the city and for Public Square. And by the way, the physical improvements are just step one. We are going to program Public Square going forward into the future, and we anticipate having 200 to 220 events each year going forward on the square. So it'll be an animated space, it'll be a very beautiful space, it'll be a space that we, from a community perspective, will, I think, celebrate in the future. Well, in some ways, when we talk about the energy in downtown, I think a lot of it, we can talk about investment, but I think it goes back to the residential growth that's occurred in downtown. Over the last 5 or 7 years, we've increased the population of downtown by about 60%. We now have just under 14,000 people that live in downtown Cleveland. We're continually adding units, and we anticipate being at about 23,000 at about 2020. And the reason that's so important is that residents animate the space during non-work hours. Downtown Cleveland remains a very vibrant commercial center. For example, 125,000 people commute into downtown Cleveland every day. But it's the residents that give it that 24-hour feel. When you come in the morning, early in the morning, for example, you'll see joggers. You'll see people walking their dogs. You'll see that type of an activity. And again, after work, the same types of things. On Sunday mornings, we see people out and about all over Cleveland. And again, that animates the space. And when you animate space, people feel more comfortable. They feel safe, and again, that builds upon itself, and we create a dynamic where more and more people want to live downtown. Well, if you really step back, the Health Line, we're now in the 8th year, believe it or not, and the Health Line opened, some people forget, in October of 2008. And by the way, very shortly after that, we experienced a significant recession in this country. But even in the midst of that period, the Health Line has done exactly what we would hope it would do. One, it created a new level of public infrastructure on Euclid Avenue. New bricks, new pavers, new trees, new planters. All of that created a great new pedestrian experience for people walking up and down Euclid, especially in terms of the downtown portion of Euclid. In addition, it created a great transportation niche between downtown and University Circle. And again, I mentioned earlier that 125,000 people work in downtown Cleveland. 65,000 people work in University Circle. It's the 4th largest employment hub in the state of Ohio. So connecting those two with a very effective bus rapid transit system, or a Health Line, has really done everything we hoped it would do, which is to allow people to move effortlessly up and down the corridor, but it's attracted a significant amount of investment. We've seen estimates that about $7 billion of investment has occurred between downtown and University Circle, all within a block of Euclid Avenue. So by any definition, it's been a great success for us. And by the way, it was voted the #1 BRT system, or bus rapid transit system, in North America a couple of years ago. In many ways, it's been a centerpiece of the revival of downtown. We have close to, I think, over the last 8 years, about 170 delegations have come into Cleveland simply to look and study that investment. Well, if you really look at those, in many ways, those are all interconnected. As you know, we did not have a functioning hotel and a functioning convention business in downtown simply because our convention center was so antiquated. And we had gotten used to not having conventions come to the city, to be honest with you. So what the convention center has done is it's reinvigorated that convention base, if you will. We've had a huge influx of conventions that have come to the city. And when I say huge influx, it's not necessarily the big auto shows that we're looking for. It's the 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 person conventions that, to be frank, bypassed us. They went to Cincinnati or Columbus or Indianapolis or Pittsburgh. They're now coming back to Cleveland. And if we can continue to get our fair share of those conventions and bring 250 to 300,000 visitors to the city each year, those conventioneers essentially act like residents. They act like people in hotel rooms. In other words, they spend money, but they don't have the corresponding service needs that we have in the community. So from our perspective, it's a great economic development influx in terms of creating the critical mass that we need. Now, we're also adding about 1,800 hotel rooms. And if we hadn't done that, if the convention center hadn't moved forward, we would not have seen the hotel investment occur in downtown Cleveland. And conversely, we also probably wouldn't have landed the Republican National Convention here. And there was a direct relationship between the hotel capacity that we created as a result of the convention center. But the Hilton was also a very important key to that, because the Hilton really in some ways was the signature convention hotel that we needed, that major 600-room hotel that allowed us to capture the RNC. And to be perfectly honest, without that, we would not have captured them. And then lastly, I'd note that in my estimation, the Medical Mart is really the frosting on the cake. The ability to leverage our medical industry, the ability for that industry to bring, again, conferences and professionals not only to the Global Center, but then also to the Convention Center in some ways really represents the growth opportunity, the exponential growth opportunity that we can create as a result of the Convention Center investment occurring in the city. So it's all interrelated, and again, a vital part of Cleveland's long-term growth, and in particular our growth in downtown. Well, in many ways, I'm most excited, I think, about is the residential growth. As I mentioned a few moments ago, if you really step back and look at Cleveland, the evolution that's occurred over the last 10 years and the growth of the residential population has really allowed us to see another wave of investment, and that's retail investment. If you think about it, the new Heinen's opened in downtown Cleveland. Heinen's an iconic name in Northeast Ohio. It's brought a lot of energy to 9th and Euclid, but more importantly, it's now beginning to bring non-culinary investments into downtown from the retail perspective. And it's those residents that, as we get closer to 20,000 in population and over that number, that will allow us to attract other types of retail to support the continued evolution of downtown. To be honest, people in our day and age like to shop where they live. And if we can increase that residential base to the numbers that we're talking about, we'll create a self-sustaining retail environment. And again, that means that retailers will come and go, but we'll always have a portfolio of retailers willing to step into their spaces. So from my perspective, that residential base, coupled with our strong historic commercial base, coupled with our hospitality industry, coupled with all of the amenities that we have downtown, really creates a dynamic that really is in many ways hard to duplicate, but also I think critical moving forward. We're no longer simply a Fortune 500 downtown. We're in essence a mixed-use downtown that creates many opportunities. And again, if you think about it, we'll be able to build on all of those stools or legs to the stools, if you will, going forward.
Anything else you wanted to add that we didn't cover?
I think that was it on there. We don't want to get into lakefront and things like that. That's too complicated.
I think it'd be great.
They do.